To the left-hand side for Vieira, who'll play it through to Gabriel Jesus, who's in here for Arsenal. Gabriel Jesus to finish it off. Oh, what a way to do it! Gabriel Jesus seals the points for Arsenal. He's back, and he's back with a bang. Into the penalty area it goes. Gabriel's header, and it's into the back of the net. Arsenal take an early lead through Gabriel.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the daily Arsenal podcast with me, Harry Symeou.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, with me, your host, Harry Symeou. I'm not going to waste time with intros or anything like that because I've got a very, very special guest with me today and we want to maximize the time. I'm sure you'd all rather hear from him than me. So I'm just going to very quickly introduce the brilliant Clive Palmer. Clive, welcome.
Hey, mate, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. It's great to talk to you. You were just telling me off air, I'm sure you won't mind me sharing, that international break gives you the time to do a bit more thinking. So I feel like I've got you just at the right time.
Yeah, thinking about not just us, but other clubs. And it's almost like a watermark, isn't it? Okay, the first 3 games are over with. Where are we? What have we done? Are we still rubbish? Does the manager need to go? Could he have made substitutions earlier? Yes, he could have on Saturday. But apart from that, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So, yeah.
Brilliant to have you, Clive. Look, I've got a bit of a confession to make. Just a quick one, by the way. You obviously everybody knows who Clive is. I don't need to do an intro, but make sure you do check out the Arsenal Vision podcast because it is fantastic. That's where Clive can be found. And yeah, it's just amazing. I love listening to the instant reaction pods, especially when I'm a bit fired up from a game, either with happiness or with sadness, I feel like, or even sometimes anger. I feel like you guys bring me back to that kind of center point, which is great. But I've got a bit of a confession to make. Over the last, I want to say maybe since Thursday, I've not been feeling that great about things. Not for a second saying that Arsenal can't challenge for the title or anything like that. Not to those extremes. But I've been thinking about the transfer business. Going into the summer, Clive, I wanted 3 players. I wanted a defender, preferably who could cover at left back. I wanted a central midfield player, and I wanted a forward. We'll talk about Sterling in a bit, but he probably wasn't my first choice or anywhere near it, actually, going into the summer.
Yep.
And then Mikel Merino has picked up this horrible injury, followed by us dropping a couple of points against Brighton, which can happen, of course, and we all know why it happened mainly. But we won't go into that again because I've spent the last week or the last 3 days moaning about that. It is. So we'll leave that there for a minute. But I look at the way Man City have started and what we've learned about them over the last few years, which is they are relentless in their nature. They never stop. They keep going. They pick up results constantly. And you know that there's so little margin for error that when you do drop a couple of points and you look at the squad and you think maybe we're a bit light here and there, it kind of sometimes can be a cause for concern. So what are your thoughts on the season so far? We'll talk about transfers and specific players in a minute, but just generally, how are you feeling about how the campaign's begun?
Yeah, it was. Should we just take the weekend firstly? I think Saturday was a tough day, right? Because we got victory snatched away from us, right? So, and then you watch Man City storm onto the pitch, and then that stormtrooper up front just slots every chance he gets, and then your mind goes back to the first 15 minutes of the Brighton game and the chances that we missed, and you start to pull yourself apart. Mentally, you start to pull your own team apart, pull players apart. Players that a week ago at Villa were just walking on air, we're starting to have a little dig at them because we haven't got the result, right? So, by the way, it's human nature. Anyone who's nodding right now, they're going to say, yeah, I did a bit of that. I may not have said it in public, but yeah, it crossed my mind. And this is what Man City do to you. And this is where we need to be really robust. We have to be robust. Perfection doesn't exist. I have thought at the back of my mind is one thing that Man City haven't done. And they've done the treble, they've won all the leagues, they've broken all the records, the goal scoring records, the points records. There's one thing they haven't done. It's the one thing that we have done. Right? And that's go invincible. And I'm thinking, and that's how someone like Pep would motivate his team. set that target, done to nothing for a while, and just remotivate a team to go invincible, go 5 in a row. That's what I would do if I was him. Yeah. So and we've got to be robust. We can't look at them and then look at ourselves. You know, I always say that I got loads of lines, as you know. But like everyone thinks next door neighbour's garden is better than theirs, right? You just got sometimes just focus on your own garden. If you start looking at theirs, you won't look after your own, right? So so I think it's very important for us to stay really strong as a fan group and not break apart. I'm sure within the club, they're making sure they've got that protective state around the team, because psychologically, we've seen at Liverpool, it can break you. Right? But I think where we are in our age curve, I think we are stronger, we're hungrier, we haven't done anything yet. We need to go and do it now. And it's in the next year, maximum 2, this team's going to want to deliver, aren't they? So yeah, that's where we are. But for me, if I look at the team or the squad from a 30,000 foot pre-season, I was thinking, okay, I want another defender, probably a lefty. Need a centre mid. Need a centre mid. Wasn't sure what it was, but I wanted one. I swayed around, as you know I do. I swayed around. Merino seemed to be the one. I thought, okay, now I know what that is. So you can start to move people around in your mind. And I wanted a forward. And I wasn't sure whether it was a centre forward or wide forward, but I definitely wanted someone who threatened the back line. Run through the back line, run through people, run through transition. I wanted that ability to move through the pitch, right? So, and that was me, right? Goalkeeper stuff was going to sort itself out because it has to, right? And you can't run that risk. You can't manage a season with that level of risk. So we were going to do something there. So that was my signings really. So what did we get? We got Calafiori. That, I'll be honest with you, Harry, I didn't know him.
Yeah.
As soon as we saw him in the summer, we all went, he looked good in our team, and fortunately enough, he's in our team, right? So Merino, I did know him, and I thought that was practical and sensible. And the more you see him, the more you think that makes sense. And Sterling, well, we all know him, and he's a system player, and Arteta plays a very similar system. So I feel okay so far.
It's the results that go against you, though, isn't it? That causes you to go into this kind of it certainly can cause you to go into a kind of state of panic. But that's not because dropping points at this stage in the season is fatal necessarily. It's because of who we are up against. And it's really difficult, isn't it, to kind of turn off what Manchester City are from the back of your mind and just focus. I know your line was great there, focus on your own garden and not your next door neighbours, but it's very difficult to do that if you feel that there's probably no other contender to them. Do you think that Liverpool are potential contenders, or is that kind of something that we can't really tell at this stage? New manager, we know they've got the players, but would you prefer they're in the title race, I guess, is the question I'm asking as well. Does that make it easier?
Yeah, I watched Liverpool pre-season, and I thought straight away they were going to be interesting, right? And they've discovered something that I maybe thought I didn't expect. They discovered Ryan Gravenberch as number 6.
Yeah,
and that's an issue, because he's moved positions and he's found himself a little bit. It's only 3 games, but he covers a lot of sins. Another thing they have that cover a lot of sins, they stick the ball in the back of the net quite ruthlessly. So however you're looking at your team, if you 1-2-0 goals up, all of your errors and deficiencies don't look so big, right? So they've got real efficiency in their front line. So I do like what they're doing. They're breaking past number records. They're building up now. They've got gears. They can upset and through, go over the top. They've got pace. They've got ruthlessness. They've got ability to change up forwards off the bench with a similar amount of pace and ruthlessness. So, yeah, I think they're here for real. I think the areas where they can struggle are fullback areas and central defence, because they haven't got a lot of depth there. So defensively, I don't think their foundations are strong, but their pattern is being defined, and we can all see it. Can't we? Not you, Harry, but everyone listening. We can all see it in 3 games, which goes to show what a terrible job Ten Hag's doing, right? But that's another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me started on Eric Ten Hag. I got some stick yesterday on 90 Min for saying I can't believe that Manchester United have gone through the interview process with a number of other managers over the course of the summer and still landed on the decision that Eric Ten Hag's the guy. But anyway, that's as you say.
It's quite funny when the camera flashed to their executives, of which there are many, and you see their faces, and you see their owner head in hands, and you just wish you could walk into the boardroom with them and listen to the conversation because they had it in their hands, right? They had it in their hands. And so, but to be honest, they've got a succession plan on the bench, so it's up to them when they decide to turn the switch.
If Ruud van Nistelrooy took over the job, I mean, I've disliked a lot of Manchester United managers over the years, but I think he would shoot right to the top of the list, given some of his history. Let's talk about some of our individual signings then. I'll start with Raheem Sterling. You mentioned that, we do know him, and of course we've seen him play his trade in the Premier League for many years.
Yeah.
So he is a player that we're very familiar with. When I heard that we were interested, I looked at it and I thought, only if the terms are right. And I was on the Arsenal Vision pod with Elliot on the Thursday and Pos, and I said, if I were Edu on deadline day, I'd be waking up and I'd be making an offer that is on our terms. We'll take him on loan. We'll cover a portion of his wages. Not in my wildest dreams, though, Clive, did I believe that we'd get him for what we got him for without a loan fee, which is incredible. Is that what's making this seem like a really good signing, or is there a really good player in there as well that we should be excited about? And it's not just about essentially getting one over Chelsea financially. This is a real good addition.
I think it's a real good addition for Arsenal. And the reason we were having a chat on the day, weren't we? And I sort of said to you, Sterling's the one that I sort of like the idea of. And the reason why, because the manager has a relationship with him. And so if he comes into our football club, that means the manager's agreed it, so... And so, I think, again, the systems that we play, how we arrive on the back post, how we retain our width, the speed and acceleration that we need in wide areas, the combination play, it's all the same. How we play with triangles out wide, rotations, and how we want people to arrive on the back post to side foot it in. I mean, he hasn't really got to take long to look at the playbook, has he, really? And I did a little scouting video earlier today, and a couple of things came out actually that I didn't know. So one, he can play really well back to goal, and how we use Saka posting up when he sort of rolls inside, and he does that. So he's got a lot of strength. So he holds off centre backs, which is great because that helps our build up. And he's still got his speed and acceleration. He still has that. If you look at his record is stunning. And what happened to him last year? At the start of the season, he was doing really well. He did his extra training over summer and he joined. So he started season at Chelsea and he was on fire. Absolutely sprinting on fire. His numbers were good. Then Gareth Southgate didn't pick him. I think that hurt him. I think it really hurt him. He decided to go the route of the Eze's and the Gordons and the younger players, which is his right. He's the manager. He can do what he likes. So he sort of discarded him. And I think that hurt him. And then at Chelsea, it became a dance-off. A dance-off with Cole Palmer, Madueke, all trying to get their shots off and get their goal bonus. It wasn't, if you watch some of the videos of the chances that he wasted or decided not to pass, if he did that for Pep or did that for Arteta, there'd be a riot. They were just so individualistic. They were so selfish as a group. What other club are going to have three people fighting over a penalty? It just doesn't happen, right? So that I don't think you can judge on that toxic dressing room. As a player, he's still got the acceleration, the ability to separate and to power through and threaten that back line. 1-2, sprint, go. He's also, when he loses it, his ability to fight for it in the first 5 seconds is really good. So he has all of the principles that we are used to. He doesn't jog about. He's got all the principles that we're used to, So I'm hopeful. But what he has, more than anything, he has a point to prove. Everybody says, most people are thinking, this is interesting. But he is a serious professional. And look at his record, look at his goal record. One season, he scored 31 goals in all comps. If you can point me to another player in our squad that's got 30 goals in all comps in a season, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but he has reached that level. Do you see what I mean? So we only need a bit of that, don't we? Not all of it, just a bit.
Where does he fit in for you, Clive? Because I think it's fair to say that most of Raheem Sterling's best work has maybe come from the left-hand side. which is kind of ironic because when we went into the summer, I think the general consensus was if we're going to bring in another wide player, it probably needs to be someone who can provide cover to Bukayo Saka. I don't really see it as that kind of binary. I don't think it has to be you're a right winger or you're a left winger. And he's certainly got the experience to adapt. And looking into some clips over the last few days, I've seen plenty of him coming in off the right and causing havoc. So do we have to pin him down as being left or right sided? Could he even be used as a false nine? Is he literally a Swiss Army knife for our front line?
He can be. Depends how you want to use him. Depends how Trossard takes it. Right. So basically, hey, look, off the left, we know him. We know what he's going to do. And he comes inside, curls it, clips it to the back post, whatever you want. From the right, I think he's quite direct. He goes on the outside a lot and crosses again. But what he does do, which I think you can learn very quickly on this international break with Ben White, is take the ball on the slant. You know, that slant pass that he does for Saka, I think. But once he's traveling on the interior, he's a real problem for you. What I like about him is something that Martinelli has to learn, or two things he has to learn for me, and there's no reason why he can't learn it, by the way. The ability to arrive in the box is unchallenged, right? So seriously, I mean, unchallenged. And his ability to play in gears. And so to slow down, when to speed up, time your runs, use your speed appropriately. I think there's no point in being the fastest kid in school if you don't know how to use it, right? And the ability to slow down and stop is really important. Thierry Henry, I've said it a million times, but Thierry Henry, fastest player I've ever seen, but mate, he could stop on the 6 minutes. He literally could stop dead and then start again. So stop you, start you. What does Saka do? Stops you, unbalances you, starts you again. I think Martinelli's all one gear. He needs to slow down and then work out when he's on the other side, your centre forward, get to the penalty spot, you know, and get to those areas where he can score. And he's only 22, he'll learn that. And he's got two people in Trossard and Sterling that don't sit on the outside when the ball's on the other side. They go into the areas where they can score. And so, yeah, I think he's a versatile forward. And to be honest, Harry, he played some of his best stuff as a number 10 behind Harry Kane for England, didn't he? As that second forward that just moved around him, went left, right. It was almost like a free forward, very active, very mobile, which really suited a more immobile positional forward in Harry Kane to have that mobility around him. And it's a good job the manager forgot that in the summer, but let's not worry about that. And yeah, I thought he was fantastic in those Euros. He was our best player, wasn't he? He was our best player. And so I know this is all 2 years ago, but he's got a new workplace now. Let's see what he does.
Yeah, and I completely agree with the relationship with Mikel Arteta point. I think that is a really key point that you make. Like, it's one of the accusations that's often been thrown at Raheem Sterling, and I think completely unfairly, by the way. We could do a whole nother podcast on the way he's been treated by sections of the media over the years. This goes back a long way as well. But one of the, I think, common misconceptions is that he's a bit of a bad apple. Well, Mikel Arteta knows him inside out, and he would definitely not bring him into this squad if he thought that was going to be an issue even for a second. The other thing is, and the other thing I kind of take encouragement from is that a lot of the time people look at players that maybe have gone to one particular club, not mentioning any names, Chelsea, and they say, well, you know, they went there and they flopped and they're not very good, and we're picking up Chelsea's crumbs and you know, leftovers. But I mean, look at the impact that Kai Havertz has had, particularly in the second half of last season and going into this season. Look at the impact that Jorginho's had at times of need for us. There's no reason why Raheem Sterling can't be the next guy in that line of players to, you know, have just been in a place where it wasn't working for them. And we've got an opportunity to take them on, mold them into our game, into our team. And all of a sudden you get a player out of them again. So I'm really, really excited about this. And obviously the fact that there isn't a great deal of risk to it is probably, I think, the dream scenario. I mean, would you have looked at this differently if Arsenal paid, I don't know, 25 to 30 million pounds for him?
Yeah, I would have done. It had to be a deal that worked for us, and it does work for us. We're paying him less than we were paying Aaron Ramsdale, right? So, and so 5 million quid, we've got a rental. And so we're at Bayern Munich, and we're not bringing on Reece Nelson, we're bringing on Raheem Sterling. And this stuff really does matter in those big moments. And so we have time now to build him up. He's a big game player, played in many, many big games. His only sin, Harry, really, that changed his perception in his country was he left an institution like Liverpool.
Yeah.
And he left perceived to go and get money at that money club, Manchester City. They hadn't, they only just started winning when he went. And so people were unsure about his motives. So then he got Daily Mailed, right? He got Daily Mailed. Basically, anytime he spent a few quid, it was on the front page of Daily Mail, where other people weren't treated the same. So that's what happens when you leave institutions and perceived to be getting above your station. So he challenged that, though. He challenged it live. He challenged it in front of people. He said, I'm being treated differently. And to be fair to Gareth Southgate, he was absolutely fantastic with him and made him a central figure of his England team when other people didn't want him to be. And always respect him for that. And he delivered for his manager. Again, when he's got a point to prove, what does he do? He delivers. What has he got right now? A point to prove.
Point of proof. Absolutely.
Yeah, so
we're talking
I'm
about
hopeful.
That's it. Yeah, me too. We're talking about Arsenal protecting themselves going into that deal. Gareth Southgate protecting Raheem Sterling. Well, you can protect yourselves as well online using NordVPN. I'm sure Clive has heard a few of these reads in his time. But NordVPN are very, very kindly sponsoring the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast for the month. And there are lots and lots of benefits that you can get out of using this fantastic service. A, as I mentioned, you can protect yourself online. B, and my favorite of the lot, you can change your geo with the click of a button. So if you want to watch something, listen to something, stream something that isn't available in your territory, you can change where you are located as far as NordVPN can see and the internet can see via the click of a single button, and that'll open up a whole new door. You can check out films, football streams, you name it, they are available to you if you change your geo. But the protection is the big thing. And here at the Chronicles of a Gooner, we are partnered up with NordVPN. So if you use the link in the description below to sign up, if you get a 2-year plan, you will get not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 months for free. And it's no risk because, of course, NordVPN have a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're unhappy with the service or you change your mind, there's no problem. You can back out of it using that money guarantee. So big thank you to NordVPN. Remember, check out the link in the description below, nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC. Right. There we go. Clive's heard a few of those, as I said.
I have.
I can't do them as good as Elliot, though.
He's fast, mate. He's fast. He's very good. He's very good.
He's brilliant. I was on with him the other day and he did it, and I had to check that I hadn't hit a button on my computer that was making everything go in fast motion. You know, when you play a podcast and you can play it in 1.5 speed, that's what I thought was happening.
Yeah, he's got talents, boy. That boy, he's got talents.
He has indeed. Clive, let's talk a little bit about the Mikel Merino injury. We've all talked about what he'll bring to Arsenal and, you know, how we think he'll kind of fit into the picture. The injury was a really big blow, wasn't it? And particularly with Declan Rice now suspended and this run of games, which we're going to talk about in a bit, that looks pretty tough after the international break. Are we well equipped enough in midfield to cope with his absence for the time being?
It depends how we want to do it. You know, we got options. It just depends what style he wants to do. And what we're doing at the moment is we're leaving Thomas Partey on his own, and we're trying to get Timber next to him, and we're chucking Declan Rice up the pitch. And there's a debate in my head and definitely on our podcast about whether that's the best position for Declan Rice. He looked at the pass maps for the Brighton game. He was our highest player. I know it's only half a game, but I'm not sure when he left West Ham coming to Arsenal, we're expecting him to be our most advanced player in an average position pass map. I don't think so. So I do think the dynamic in midfield needs to be worked on. I forget about the individuals, just that I do think the distances are a bit big, and we're getting, I don't want to focus on saying getting run through. I think there's a difference between playing with a single pivot and a double pivot. But there's also a difference what's happening, Harry's. Other teams are blocking our middle and the only space is on the outside. So Odegaard and Rice are having to go wide to receive the ball. So if they're high and wide, there's any danger, any trouble, it's a long way for them to travel back in. Right? So as you know, mate, you go through, a press, you go through it, you go over it, you go around it. And we're trying to go around it. And in the end, the most success that we can was going over it. You know, and I think we need to go over it a little bit more. because Villa did it and Brighton did it. They're blocking the central spaces with 6 people, and they are just standing there. They're not even pressing us; they're just standing there. When we gamble inside and lose it, it's trouble. And when we go wide and get munched, you get munched in touchline, you don't get a booking. So people just having a go at us, right? So we are getting some progression down the right-hand side, but maybe not enough on the left, and we need to go over a little bit more. And so while this is all happening, I'm not sure the dynamics is quite correct. I'm not sure we're maximizing things. And now we've lost 2 players who, for many, and probably will be the first 2 on, from the centre midfield perspective, by Christmas time, say, So now we have to adjust. So what are we going to do? We go double pivot with Jorginho and Rice, or are we going to bring in, say, I wouldn't want to do this, particularly against Spurs. I wouldn't want to take Havertz off the centre forward role. But are we going to do things, bring Jorginho and Partey together and maybe progress with fullbacks a little bit more? Or are we going to maybe do a thing like bring Trossard in as an 8, get him free in there with Havertz as a combination and use different things on the outside in Martinelli, for example, to make sure we can keep Spurs stretched? There's lots of things we can do. Jesus might be fit. Some people say play him centre forward, where he hasn't played for a while. But again, he offers options off the bench. And the guy we've just been speaking about can also offer options off the bench against Spurs, who show you their leg. One of my phrases, how they show you knickers. They show the sides, and they say, if you can get into that space, you can have it. Well, we've got people who can get into that space, right? So yeah, it's one. Let's see what happens, right? Let's see what happens. I'm comfortable whatever we do, long as it's a strategy that we play to. Don't just put people in there, right? So could play Wayne the area and drop Odegaard deeper. You don't know. We've got so many things we can do, and I'd rather keep the opposition guessing.
Can I ask you about Thomas Partey? Because there have been some games, I know we've only had 3 games this season, right? But there's been some games where I've come away thinking, after a 10-15 minute spell, he looks great. And then I see a 10-15 minute spell where he gives the ball away, doesn't look like he can get around the pitch quick enough for me. And I know, like, the big caveat here is what you've just said, which is that the distances are too big, and we're asking him at times to marshal areas that are just completely unrealistic, even for the fittest of players. And we know that Thomas Partey isn't that. But I look at him sometimes and I think, yes, that's what Thomas Partey gives me. And there are other times where I think he just looks like his best days are behind him. And it's so early in the season that I can't make my mind up fully. But I need a bit of guidance here. Like, how do you see the Thomas Partey situation right now?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I think end of last season, he came back from a 7-8 month injury, whatever it was, came back in, looked okay. If anything, he got worse as the season was going on. By the last game, he wasn't great in that last game, although I did sort of argue against it at the time. I went and rewatched it. That's not great. He looked really stiff. But he's been injured a few times, but this time he's had an operation for the first time. And since he had the operation, I think he's played a number of games in a row and not been injured, touch wood. But he's slowly getting up to speed. And I went to LA in the summer and I saw him. I thought, you're looking a bit better. And then it's been a progression. But he has these 10-minute periods where you think, oh my God, we need to sell him. Do you know what I mean? Literally, where he goes from hero to zero. And then, at the weekend, he had a period in the first half where he just gave the ball away a few times. I mean, he was being pressurized. It wasn't like it wasn't like a unforced error. But then I thought, oh no, he's in a bit of trouble. He's struggling here. My halftime chat, he's struggling in possession. He went to 10 men, and suddenly he steps up into the game really, really fit. It's a bit of a box of rebels. Not sure what you're going to get. Now I do think some of that is systemic. I do think. Some people are saying, no, we need to play Jorginho because we're not so open. And I thought, no, I've got to look into this. Why are people saying that? So I looked into last season's past match when Jorginho played. And in all of those games, apart from one, which was Brighton away, he had Declan Rice right next to him. So we're playing double pivot and we use Kiwior on the outside. So in your eye, when Jorginho plays, we are not so open. The reason why, Declan Rice is standing right next to him, right? Two of them together can manage most of his fields. We're talking Jorginho here. He's won a few things in his time, right? So when Thomas Partey plays, the manager uses them differently. He pushed Declan Rice up the pitch. So naturally, when you're watching with your eye, we're more open when Partey plays. It's a difference between a deep line playmaker and a deep line metronome. A metronome is what Jorginho is. He needs people around him to bounce passes off, bounce, 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 go. Go long, clip it into Havertz. What Partey does, you play through him, he does a turn, beats a man, and gets us going. But you need to risk it with him, because then when we do get it out of his feet, we've got 5 people at the pitch ready to overload their defense. So the risk and feeling that you have, so risk versus reward, is deep line playmaker tends to be alone with maybe a fullback. A deep line metronome tends to be in like a double pivot, and they tend to bounce it off each other. And so you feel more secure. I personally am a double pivot person. I don't really care who's in it. That's my personal bias, particularly when it's winning time, not so much in August and September. But I do think we're leaving Partey a lot to do. I do think that. But if you put Jorginho in there, it'll be worse. In that system, you'd have to bring Rice back. Do you see what I'm trying to say, Harry? I think it's more, this is what the manager wants to do. He wants people up the pitch, and he thinks Thomas Partey is the best person to carry that risk. But I will say, when that number 8 comes in, is the best person, particularly as teams are blocking the centre and we're not really playing through the centre, is that best person to carry that big space risk, Declan Rice? And it probably is, isn't it? He's 24 years of age.
Yeah,
it probably is.
I think when I go back to last season, there was a period of time where I felt that we were struggling to move the ball through the lines from the 6th position. And I actually think that that's why Mikel Arteta, and I've said this before, but I think that's why Mikel Arteta ended up just tweaking it a little bit and bringing Jorginho in. And you're right to say that he was kind of being babysat a little bit, because when we talk about
Just
Jorginho, yeah, we can talk about all the things that he's great at, but mobility isn't his strong point, right? So, or physicality. So having Declan Rice alongside him, it gave him the platform to go on and play his game. So I guess the question for me today, Clive, is, are we at the point now where Thomas Partey needs a bit more babysitting as well? And are we right to still trust him the way that we did 2-3 seasons ago, to sit there and do everything? Because right now, I don't see him being able to do that. And I don't know if it's rust. I don't know if it's the early part of the season. As you said, I've seen it in spells. But every time I start to convince myself that, yeah, actually it's fine, then we have those spells where he looks like he's completely out of control. So is that the thing now? Do we have to look at Rice's role and just tweak that in order to make sure that we give Partey ample protection as well?
Whether it's Partey or anybody, I prefer that. I don't prefer the distance to be so big, if I'm honest with you. But the reason why they do that, Harry, is if Rice comes deeper, what you do, you bring someone else to you. You bring another player to you to come and block that area. So from a comfort point of view, we like to see more people in front of our defence. We all do, right? But from a coaching point of view, if I can get you at the pitch, I'm going to force them to think about things. If we get it out and around and over, they're running back towards our goal. Do you see what I mean? They're running back, and we've got the advantage. And that's what coaches do. They take that risk versus reward. So with my defensive head on, which I'm much more defense first guy. You know, Elliot's the fancy down attacking guy, right? I'm a defense. I'd have 9 centre halves, mate, if you give me a chance, right? So and so from my defensive side, but then you have to look at what other people do, you know, and we're not the only team that does this, right? So Manchester United do it worse, right? So and so it's a style thing. At the moment, he seems to want Rice high up. I would like to see him tweak it. I would like, regardless whether it's Partey or Jorginho, I'd like to see 2 in front, rather than get Rice to do 2 jobs, the attacking job, and then come back to the defensive job. How about he starts lower and then joins the attack a little bit later in a later phase of play? And I just think you get him nearer the action. I was saying to Elliot today, do you remember when Rice and Partey first played together, Community Shield against Man City? It was Partey at the base, but Rice was in front of him, almost pressing in front and sweeping left to right. I thought that role suited him perfectly. He didn't have to play make, but he could go and smash people, win a ball high up the pitch, carry, travel, but he could still get back in to be a double pivot. And I thought, yeah, that's your job. That's your role at your age, in our life cycle of our project. But we seem to have got him out in the left wing at the moment, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. But I'm sure we'll tweak it over time, and I'm sure this will sort itself out. But that's my gut feel. I still feel at the weekend, well, he got sent off by the corner flag, right? What's all that about?
Yeah.
That so I want to see him in the middle of the action. That's where I want to see him.
Yeah, I'm going to restrain myself from talking about that incident again because
Yeah.
to say I lost my head a few times over the last few days on that would be putting it mildly. You mentioned the left wing. I want to talk about that in just a second. If you guys have got any questions in the live chat, because there are lots and lots of you with us, please do drop them in. I know we've got a couple of super chats that have come through as well. Don't worry, I've got them, and we're gonna go to those in just a moment. But I do want to ask Clive about the left wing because, going into the season, I think a lot of us felt that Leandro Trossard at the back end of last season had probably done enough to make that position his own. I know we talk about them both always playing. None of them seem to play an entire game. The other one always comes on. That's fine. But going into the season, I thought that Trossard probably on merit deserved it. I understand tactically why Martinelli gets it sometimes. But of course, after the Villa game where Trossard came off the bench and was a difference maker again, he came back into the side against Brighton. Who would be your go-to left winger right now? I know that you're going to play different games against different opposition and stuff, but I mean, surely Mikel Arteta has to make a decision on one or the other in terms of who's going to play regularly, because there's a certain Belgian that plays for Arsenal that, as far as I can see, doesn't look that happy.
Yeah, and I always remember how Trossard arrived. He arrived in dispute, and I've always felt he might leave in dispute. Right, so he had a rough summer with the Belgian squad, didn't he? And he's come back, and he's not afraid to show his feelings, right? But we'll see how he goes. I'm sure I'll also have a word with him and say, look, you're a key part of the project. You're not going anywhere until we get money for you. So, and that happens. That happens.
Come again.
Yeah, until that happens, right? So, I have this discussion all the time. I'm sure your viewers and listeners do. I sometimes walk along while I'm walking my dog saying, what's the team for my life? What's my Champions League final team? And I sort of did it today, right? And I thought to myself, I haven't seen him even play yet. I went through it and I went, I like the back four with Calafiori there. I watched him at the weekend and I thought, oh, he looks good, mate. He looks good, and so the back four, back five sort of names itself. I did end up going for Rice and Merino in the centre mid and with Odegaard. And obviously Saka and Havertz. But my left wing, which may surprise a few people, but game for your life, my left wing was going to be Gabriel Jesus.
Okay.
Because I feel he's naturally a person that doesn't want to be in the centre of the action. He wants to be on the exterior of the action. So when he plays centre forward, he drifts left. Some of his best goals and actions have all come from that left-hand side. We beat Man City when he was on the right-hand side. So Martinelli, who I really, really like, but I still feel he's young. He's 22 going on 21. Do you know what I mean by that? He's young, where Saka's 22 going on 25, just by the way and experience and the decision-making that he has. Martinelli's a little bit behind with emotional and decision development. That's all. Not, talent's really, really high. So game for your life, hey, game for your life. If you don't win this game, you're going to be killed. That's the position.
That's what you go with.
That's what I go with. That's what I go with. Now, another reason, we want to go over the press. You need targets. You need to hit people. So Saka, Havertz, Jesus, they can hold the ball like centre forwards, and so people won't be putting that block six in front of us anymore when you have those three up front, so. And it will change again. Then when it changes again, we can play make through the base of midfield. And Thomas Partey's got more room. Declan Rice has got more room. Jorginho's got more room. Whatever you decide to do. But you need to break what people are doing at the moment. So the only way to do that is to change what you do up front. And left wing for me, that will be where I play. Martinelli will be he's the one I'm focused on. Yeah. And Trossard is more of a short-term thing for me, and that's great. I don't see. It'd be interesting to see if he gets another contract. I mean, what do you think? I don't think he's going to get one, mate. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's a player who, as we've seen over the past few days, there is interest in. I'm not saying that Leandro Trossard is ready yet to go and play in Saudi Arabia, but the fact that that offer came in, I said it on the pod yesterday, and I put a clip of it out on TikTok, and I got so many responses from people saying, you're talking nonsense. But I guess my opinion, Clive, was that for Al Ittihad to come in and make an offer that actually financially wasn't that appealing, like a 5 million loan with a potential obligation of 20 to 25 million, given the money that they throw about, it wasn't that appealing. Have they got an inkling from somewhere? And I'm not saying directly from Leandro Trossard that he's not happy and open to it, because why would you make that offer? It was completely random and out of the blue. So I'm not saying that he's edging for a move, but it got me thinking about his future. And I completely agree with you. He is more of a short-term thing.
Yeah. So if you think back to the moment he arrived, I'm sure there are people out there with better data than I am. If you look at his goals and assists, mate, I don't know where we'd be without him. His output has been sensational. First year it was assists. Last year it was goals, and big goals, European goals, big goals, winning goals, first goals, break game open type goals. The Villa game, tough game, comes in, bang, first touch, goal. He missed one chance Villa at home last season. If he scores that, who knows what would have happened, right? So this guy has really delivered. And I don't think he gets enough credit per se. However, I do feel he's a player that's part of our front six group. And to have him in our front three, number one pick, I'm never convinced, because every time I get convinced, and you go to the stadium, how I'm going to say, he needs to play. He needs to start. And when he starts, oh my God, where's he gone? I can't find him. And then when he comes off the bench, oh my God, he's got to start next game. And it's very difficult to say, but he's a quality player and he's very experienced. He can finish off both feet and he's very smart. He's part of our front six group, and after the international break, we know what we've got in those 7 days. We've got 3 massive away games. He's going to play, isn't he? He's going to play, so he'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine. It just got me thinking about the kind of, I'm not going to say long-term future of Leandro Trossard, because I never really saw him as a 3-4 season player at Arsenal, but it got me thinking about the kind of more immediate future. What does that mean? The fact that clubs are circling around him and had the encouragement, if you like, to go and actually make a thing of it.
You know how this game works, right?
Yeah.
You know how this game works. Suddenly a bid came in for that player, who had the strange celebration at Villa. Let's just see Raheem Sterling come in. It's that player that suddenly got his hand up, right? So, hey, look, we'll see. But Arsenal can respond, and they have done.
Brilliant stuff. Just to wrap up, we're just going to take a couple of questions from the live chat. Dial Square, thank you so much for your kind super chat. Says, interested to hear thoughts on the North London derby midfield. We've talked quite a bit about the midfield, so kind of quick fire, Clive, and I'll give mine as well. What would be your midfield for the Spurs game, knowing that there's no Merino, there's no Rice? How would you approach it?
It's a difficult one. I'm torn between sort of dropping Havertz slightly in, but sort of pairing him with Trossard together. I quite like that grouping. And or just going Jorginho. So sometimes I look at a dressing room, Harry, and say, if you're one of the centre mids go out, Jorginho's next in line. And if I was him, I'd be pretty cheesed off if that they don't pick me when we've lost a player. I know the player that normally plays in his role is probably going to play in party, but I'm thinking I can move over to the left and we can play a double pivot and we can do. I'd be cheesed off if I was him, because I'm next in line. And the way Arteta works, regardless of whether we think they're good enough or not, he does respect that hierarchy of selection. So I think it'd be Jorginho with Odegaard freer, and I would go Martinelli for that game, definitely for that game.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I'd want that pace on the left-hand side. The thing that got me thinking there was the Trossard Havertz partnership. That's a really good pairing. And I asked Mikel Arteta about that a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned that because of their capacity to both play as a false nine, it means that they're on the same wavelength and they both link up really well, which was a really interesting point, I thought. But I think I would go with the kind of slightly more defensive shape with the double pivot, Jorginho, Partey, and give Odegaard that freedom. Also, I just don't have a clue when Gabriel Jesus is going to be back. They've been very tight-lipped on that. And so the idea of taking Havertz out of centre forward without Jesus to come in, who, as you mentioned, hasn't played any football pretty much, it's a worry, isn't it? That's what I'd go with as well.
Last time we played Havertz in midfield properly and Rice at 6 was for Villa at home.
Yeah, didn't go well.
Oh, we didn't go well, did it, mate? It might not have been their fault, but I still got feelings. Keep Havertz at centre forward, mate. He's our best centre forward by a mile.
Yeah, he's playing brilliantly at the moment. He really is. Sadiq says, Harry and Clive, thank you for this live stream. Can you rate the transfer window for me? A separate rating for outgoings and incoming. So I guess we'll do this out of 10. Let's start with outgoings, Clive. How do you feel about the sales that we've managed this summer?
I think if we did a list, I think every single one of the sales was more or less gone. I think we cancelled one contract and Kieran Tierney made to explode his hamstring in the Euros, so we couldn't sell him. Apart from that, Harry, I'm not sure there's anybody else that we could sell that we wanted to sell. So that's got to be a 9, hasn't it, for sales? Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think that a lot of people went into the summer window with completely unrealistic expectations of what we were going to get for some of these players as well. Like, for example, in the Ramsdale scenario, in the Nketiah scenario, where those guys at the back end of last season played very little football, in Ramsdale's case, the entire season. You look at that and I think to myself, how can you then demand top dollar for a player that you essentially have devalued with your actions? So you kind of have to understand that if they become a bit part, that their value becomes less. And sometimes you have to wait till the end of the window to move them on. The club that are wanting to sign them know that you're desperate to get rid, and therefore will wait as late as possible to try and get the best possible deal. That's just the way it works. I'd give it a 9 as well. If anything, I probably wouldn't have let Reece Nelson go. That's the one thing I probably wouldn't have done. I know for the player it's the best thing, and I wish him all the best because he really does need it. But from a purely selfish club perspective, I might not have let that one go through on deadline day.
I think what he does with Reece Nelson, and I've done it, and my son said something the other day, and he's quite clever, the little sod, right? He said we had depth before, but it was fake depth. We weren't using it, but the names were there giving us comfort. I like that line, fake depth, because now with the players that we've added in Calafiori, Merino, and Sterling, that's not fake. That's for real, isn't it? That's real depth. And add that to Kiwior, who I rate more than some people. These are, and he's probably stayed because Tomiyasu's not healthy, right? So these are players that have played games, big games. This is not fake. They're trusted. They're proper players, and so I think we're much stronger for it. So having these players in the club, inefficient, not being used. There's a list of players that came out last season and played under 1,000 minutes. I think almost all of them are gone. Yeah, and I think that's what you want. That's really smart, So we got an efficient squad from a cost-based point of view, and we got an efficient squad from a true depth point of view. We don't know this yet, but now 3 games a week start from here on in. So we're going to soon know how good they really are.
Yeah. What about in terms of incomings rating out of 10?
Incomings, I'm gonna now send your listeners into into Riotsville. I compare ourselves to I compare ourselves to Liverpool and City, right? For some reason, I haven't worked this out yet, and I'm fishing for somebody smarter than me to tell me. All 3 clubs haven't really spent. Why is that? We are the 3 elite clubs in the league. They're more likely going to be in the Champions League competitions going forward. Why haven't they? Why are all 3 of us? We've all got money. No one's in PSR trouble. Why have all 3 clubs been conservative? I don't know yet. Is it regulatory? There's a reason. So on that basis, from what we've done in my air quotes perceived financial climate, which I'm not sure is really there, I'll give it a 7. But only because a couple of my YouTubers, people that I like Gokares and Nico Williams and Alexander Isak, that's the only reason they're not here. But realistically, who is making those transfers this year in the world?
It's a good point.
Brighton have spent 200 million. They're an outlier. Only Chelsea, but Chelsea have made 186 million in sales. So it's a strange climate. I think us as fans, we are yet to understand it. So I'm holding back my normal, not that I get upset anyway, Harry, but I'm not holding back my ire because I don't think I understand the market as we once knew. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think, I'm not saying that we're in PSR trouble or that Liverpool are or that Man City are. No. But I do think what happened with that in recent times has kind of been a little bit of a reset for a lot of people in terms of how they maybe look at things going forward. And I'm like you, I would give it a 7 out of 10 as well. And the reason I won't give it higher is because, like you, I had players in mind that I really, really wanted us to go out and sign, and we haven't got them. But equally, at the start of the summer, I said I wanted that defender that could play at left back. I wanted that left 8, and I wanted an attacker, and we've got all 3. So I'd be a hypocrite if I now sort of went lower than a 7. It's just the fact that some of the names are not the ones that I was kind of dreaming of, if you like, but I also realized that our dreams are not always a reality. Just a final question from Russ to sign off. Do you see a world where if Sterling is a success, we keep him beyond this season if a deal can be done? I've been thinking a bit about this because I've kind of got myself so hyped up about the Raheem Sterling signing that in my head, it's definitely going to be a success. So do you then start looking a little bit further forward? Do you then start looking at the potential of bringing him in? Because it's going to be a difficult deal to do with Chelsea, isn't it?
Well, it depends, right? If Chelsea cancels his contract, then he becomes a free agent and then he can do what you like. I think Sterling and Trossard are in a shootout, you know, and you say he does well, really well. And so, because let's be honest, Trossard really saw off Smith Rowe. Trossard could play in multiple positions and he saw him off. He took his minutes, he saw him off, he scored goals, and Smith Rowe's now out for them. Trossard could get seen off by Sterling. Just see him off. They're the similar age. Maybe Trossard's a touch older. He could see him off, and suddenly Sterling becomes our Trossard in the squad. But numbers have got to be right. They can't be Chelsea numbers, 350. So anyway, Arsenal are going to get interested in him if the contract gets cancelled, gets paid out, and he comes to Arsenal. So, but we haven't seen him in the shorts yet, mate. If he runs about and kicks into the car park, none of us are going to fancy him, you know. So, but if he does well, then these discussions become real. But it has to be the right circumstances. Has to be.
Agreed. And that was my view on bringing him in on loan as well, bringing him in full stop. So I think it's one of those situations that we're just going to have to watch and see how it develops and evolves over time. And then we'll be in a better position, I think, when that time comes to make the right decision. Clive, thank you so much for joining me. Honestly, I really, really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man. I always appreciate your insight and your, you know, I feel like I learn something every time I speak to you. So thank you for joining me. Really, really appreciate it. Let people know where they can find you, how they can follow you. I know most of them already do, but just in case there's someone that's been living under a rock for the last 5 years, let them know.
Yeah, I still get surprised when people recognize me. So to be honest, I jump onto your shows every now and again, and I see your audience, and they're quite nice. You know, they're quite nice people, you know, not too. And so I thought when you said about coming on, I was glad to come on. So yeah, I do the Arsenal Vision, do a few other things as well, but primarily just do the Arsenal Vision and try to help people enjoy their experience of football, right? That's all I try to do. That's it.
Amazing stuff. Clive, thank you very much. Thank you to every single one of you for watching us. If you've been watching us live on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you leave a like on the video because that really, really does help. Check out the NordVPN link in the description as well. There's a cracking deal that is exclusive to listeners of the podcast that they are sponsoring at the moment. So make sure you check it out for the best value. And a big thank you to everybody that listens on audio as well. If you could leave us a review on your preferred platform, I'd be very, very much grateful. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner. It's the international break, so I can't tell you what we're going to talk about yet. We'll just have to see what happens, how I feel in the morning. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Goodbye.